Bobby Fischer always used to say, I don't believe in the psychology of the players. I believe in good moves. According to Bobby Fischer, if we always focus on finding the best move in the position, we're sure to have a good game and a good result. Let's take a look at this example he played in 1970 in Palma de Mallorca, and we're going to learn a lot. He played against Addison with the Black Pieces, who played the Scandinavian defense. And they say that when this position appeared in the game, he smiled rather abruptly at his opponent, since he considered that the Scandinavian defense at that level was quite inferior compared to the others. Why? Because in this case, by capturing the pawn, logically here, as you can see, in his second move, he's already looking, as always, for the best move. In this case, capturing the opponent's pawn. Why? Because this way he draws the opponent's queen toward the center of the board where it can be easily attacked. Let's figure out again what the best move would be. In this case, it's almost always best to develop a minor piece. We can develop a minor piece while attacking a queen that has to move away. In this case, in this Scandinavian defense, the queen can go to several places. It can go to e5, d6, or d8, which is what happened in the game. In this case, if we look for the best move again, we'll find that d4 is definitely one of the candidates. There's not always just one good move. There are many, but d4 is definitely a good move. Whenever we can place one of the two central pawns on any of the four central squares of the board, it will always be a good move. Why did Booma Fischer smile when his opponent played the Scandinavian defense? Alright, as I said, at that level, it's generally not considered very good because it loses a lot of tempo, but at the intermediate level, it works really well. Let's continue with the game. The opponent played knight to f6, and again, we need to look for a good move. There are actually many here. For example, knight to f3, or the one Fischer used, bishop to c4. All he's doing is developing one of his minor pieces and placing it in a good spot. All he's doing is focusing on what really matters and not making moves that serve no purpose. The game continued with bishop to f5. Let me tell you that here there's a slightly stronger move that's considered better nowadays, which is this bishop to g4, and I'm going to explain why. Here, the player with the black pieces would take advantage of the fact that this bishop is well defended by the knight, so now this bishop can't be captured by the queen. Therefore, it's threatening our queen. What should we do? A move like f3 does indeed stop the threat, and also creates a threat for our opponent, but he would simply retreat the bishop. And as you can see, this pawn is really annoying here. It doesn't let the knight develop, and it doesn't let the queen develop properly either. That's why this move is usually not good. So what should we do if they come in with the bishop here? We could, for example, play knight to f3, or knight from g to e2 would also be good moves. However, here, after a move like e6, black would be perfectly fine. They can develop this bishop, which is already well placed. The other bishop can also come out. They can castle, and black enjoys a good position. That's why here, after the move bishop to f5 by black, which isn't a bad move, we can see that there was already a better move, which was bishop to g. Bishop to g4 at least would have put us in more trouble, because it would have forced us to defend the queen. Alright, since nothing is threatening us here, Bobby Fischer thought the normal thing would be to develop my knight. Would that be a good move? Yes, an excellent one. Is there a better one? Yes, and he found it. And do you know what it is? A double attack. Whenever we can make a double attack, we should try to do it, because the double attack is one of the strengths. Most important in chess, if we manage to make a good double attack, we'll be able to control the position well. For example, here we have this queen to f3 available, attacking the bishop and also attacking this b7 pawn, which in turn would attack his rook. The double attack, as I was saying, is one of the strongest tactics in chess. In fact, it's one of the tactics I explain in my new book, The Secrets of Real Progress. You already know that we explain quite a few tactics, eh? For example, you see here the double attack. It's well explained here. You have it in the new book. At the end of the video, I'll tell you more about this book. I don't want to bother you with it right now. So as you can see, with queen to f3, a pawn is being sacrificed. Queen or bishop takes on c2. Is it worth it to sacrifice this pawn? Well, in this case, you should know that taking this pawn would be a Pretty serious mistake, and I'll show you why. If bishop takes on c2, it's true they've captured a pawn, but we would capture another one, and this other one seems way too powerful. The rook is being threatened, so the only move should be knight to d7 so that the queen defends the rook. There's no other way to defend the rook, do you see? And then here we could continue in many ways, but for example, bishop to f4, threatening this pawn. With the queen and the bishop, it should continue. For example, rook to b8, we would capture the one on a7, and no matter what they try here, we could come in to threaten the queen with both bishops, and we would win the queen. And this would be a complete blunder for the black pieces. If you want, you can visualize it yourselves on the board, and you can see that here, after this queen to f3, it would be a bad move to capture the c2 pawn. So what should black do here? Logically, defend the bishop and defend the pawn. There are only two ways to defend both pieces at the same time. One would be to retreat the bishop to its original square. It doesn't seem like the best move, does it? Bringing the bishop to f5 just to move it back on the next turn. And the other option, the one black used, is queen to c8, which defends the bishop and also this pawn. Now, the queen is overloaded. I also explain overloading well in the book. Perfect. So here again, we have to keep looking for the best move, right? How should we continue? Well, now we should develop, for example, this knight and this bishop. If we follow the rule of developing the minor pieces first, we'll be on the right track. It's true that we've made a small exception with the queen because we had a double attack available, but now we're going to keep developing these two, and really whichever two we develop would be a good idea. But let's see, Chesty, if we develop these two pieces, now they can capture this pawn because we no longer have queen takes b7 available. And in fact, Bobby Fischer played bishop to g5, sacrificing this pawn, which the black player now does capture. And it's actually great that they capture it, because that way we can explain why it's not a good idea to take that pawn. Sometimes we need to understand that in chess, who wins at chess? Who gives checkmate, right? And many times being down a pawn doesn't mean less strength to deliver checkmate. On the contrary, it means the opponent is falling way behind, and their pieces aren't working well. For example, here the game continues with rook to c1, threatening this bishop, which has to move back. And now it's true that we can develop the last minor piece we have left, and let's take a moment to evaluate the position. What difference do you see? I see a huge difference. Both bishops are perfectly developed, while the opponent only has one, and it's a bit trapped. Both knights are developed, while the opponent only has one. We're going to castle on the next move, while our opponent still needs three moves, for example, e6, bishop to e7, and then castling. And on top of that, we have a rook placed on an open file that's already directly attacking the opponent as soon as we move these two pieces, while the opponent's rooks are extremely far from getting into the game. All of this that I just mentioned is simply in exchange for a pawn. Do you understand the difference? You'll probably have to watch this game several times. That's fine, you can watch it as many times as you need. Let's see if you leave a nice like and we can break the record for likes, because these videos are extremely useful. The game continues with knight from b to d-thon. And now, again, we need to think about the best move. It seems obvious, right? Castle. We develop the minor pieces, control the center, and castle. These are the three principles for playing a good game. The opponent does the same, plays e6, blocking our light squared bishop, and also opening up a path for his dark squared bishop, the last minor piece he needs to castle and develop. The game continues with a very interesting move. There are probably a lot of good moves here. One really good move that comes to mind is knight to f4, for example. This is where a lot of people get lost. They've developed their minor pieces, controlled the center, and castled, and then they ask, now what? And they don't know what to do next. The idea is that now it's time to improve our pieces. For example, knight to f4 improves a piece that wasn't well placed and puts it in a much better position, threatening the bishop and also threatening this d6 square with two pieces, which together with a rook could be very dangerous. Thank you. It could really improve our position a lot. Bobby Fischer here went for a secondary plan, okay? Of course, we don't always have to agree with other players' plans, but it's interesting to see why he does it. He played bishop takes f6, sacrificing the bishop pair. Extremely interesting, and I'm going to explain why. You guys, how would you capture? Would you take this bishop with the g-pawn or with the knight? Probably all of you thought with the knight. However, what would happen if you captured with the knight? I'm going to show you, because in the game it was captured with the pawn. The idea is that here, white could push their central pawn and open up the position, taking advantage of this. This is important, and you can apply it in all your games. Open the position when the opponent's king is still in the center. When your king is castled and your opponent's is not, you should open the center to be able to attack the king. And now, how would all this continue? For example, pawn takes pawn, knight takes, exchange of knights, bishop, pieces are exchanged here in the center, and there's a threat. Bishop takes on b7, threatening the queen and the rook. So for example, c6. And now, for example, this bishop isn't actually threatened, because if black captures this bishop, we would capture the queen. So we could continue with a move like knight to f4, and we'd be completely winning. The opponent wouldn't have time to defend everything. They can't stop the rook from coming in with bishop to e7 because we would capture the bishop and give this check, which would probably end up being checkmate. So here, they really can't do anything at all. Nothing. If they try to bring in the queen, we could also bring in the rook, and I encourage you to study this position carefully because it's completely winning for white. So I'm going to go back. You'll understand perfectly that here, after capturing the pawn, I'm going to put this here and this here, just like it was before. I'm going to set it up like this. Yes, I think I did it right, and this knight is here. Exactly. The idea is that here it was captured with it. I'm missing this pawn. It was captured with the pawn. You saw why capturing with the knight was dangerous, right? You can watch it as many times as you need. The idea is that here, Bobby Fischer applied the same principle. You shouldn't make things too complicated for yourself. Apply the principles you already know. The opponent's king is in the center and ours isn't. What should we do? Open up the center. With which move can we try to open the center? With this one, d5. Logically, the player with the black pieces doesn't want to open the center, so they close it with e5. See the logic? Very good. What should we do now? Once again, I've run out of ideas. Well, let's improve our pieces as always. Which piece can I improve? Well, a lot of them. For example, this knight is being blocked by an umbrella. The umbrella means it can't jump forward because there's a pawn in the way. So, for example, we could play knight to g3 to improve our knight. Or, for example, what Bobby Fischer does. This bishop is blocked by the pawn, so I improve it over here and pin the knight in such a way that now you can't play this move here, c6, because I would capture the pawn, pawn takes, bishop takes, and I'd be in a great position. Exactly, what he did was improve a piece. The game continues with bishop to e7. Again, what do we do when we don't know what to do? Let's improve our pieces. I'm going to improve this knight, which now targets this advanced post on f5. A 6 threatens our bishop, and now we have to think about where we want to retreat it. For example, there are many possible moves. Here, Bobby Fischer decided on bishop d3, facing off these two bishops. Would it be a good idea for black to capture this bishop now? Well, no, because if they capture this bishop, this king will never be safe. In the center, the king is never really safe, right? Because we can attack him easily. And if he castles, it would be even worse. Therefore, this bishop is serving as a defender of the castling, so pay attention to Bobby Fischer's thinking. I am going to threaten this bishop, which is working very well to defend his position. Here, black doesn't capture the bishop, but instead moves their queen back to its original position since it wasn't doing anything there anymore. Alright, so now what? Well, Bobby Fischer says all my pieces are really well placed. I could put the rook on e1 or d1, that would be a good move. But you know what? I'm going to go for the attack. Since this defender is really bothering me, I'm going to play h4. And if they're not careful, I'll play h5 and force this bishop to trade. So after the move h4, black realizes it and plays h5. If they notice, nothing happens, but if they do not, then we're threatening their bishop there. And now, well, they keep improving their pieces, bishop to f4. This bishop is fantastic here. Can it be captured? Well, it wouldn't be a good idea because not only would we get rid of this bishop, but we'd also improve our knight. The idea is that black keeps improving their pieces, and we do the same. Look at what black does here. They attack the pawn on d4 with two pieces, with the knight and the queen. Do you know what Fischer does? Exactly the same thing he did with the c2 pawn. What matters to me is in a pawn, what matters is beating you in the game. In this case, I'm going to greatly improve my pieces. He moves the knight from c to e4 and says, if you want to take the pawn, you can take it. In fact, that's what happened in the game. However, now the opponent's pieces are extremely well placed. Sorry, I mean Fischer's pieces. How do we improve the position? This rook that wasn't doing anything, I put it in the center, pin the knight, because the queen is behind it. I force the opponent to play c6 to defend this knight. And now I keep pressing with the move knight to c3. I'm putting pressure on this knight, which I'm now threatening with 1, 2, and 3 pieces. You're not going to be able to defend that. So here the player with the black pieces says, well, since I can't defend it, I'm going to improve my queen and threaten this b2 square. A good idea for Fischer would be to play knight takes knight, pawn takes knight, and queen takes pawn, right? And it would be a really good position, recovers in the pawn. However, here, Bobby Fischer comes up with a much better move. Feel free to pause the video right now to see if you can find the good move that Bobby Fischer used here to finish off this beautiful victory. I'm going to say it right now. The move was the following. A quality sacrifice. Rook takes d5. He sacrifices a rook in exchange for a knight. Why? Well, let me explain. Because now, logically, black is forced to capture. This is a forced move, otherwise they would have lost a knight. And when they capture, the knight comes in with a lot of force. This knight here in the center attacks the queen, attacks the bishop, and also, when the queen moves, attacks the c7 square with check, and I'm going to take the rook. So it was a temporary sacrifice. Do you get it? Here, the player with the black pieces captured this pawn. It's not a good idea, but going back with the queen wouldn't have helped much either, because the game would have continued as follows. Knight to c7, check. If the king moves away, we would win the queen with check, and I take the queen. And if the king tries to come over here, well, exactly, sorry, the bishop is here. So we can see that, in fact, the king can't do absolutely anything. Either he goes over here, or he gives up the queen. So here, going back wouldn't have helped him at all, and at least this pawn was captured. And how did Bobby Fischer finish the game? Because it was spectacular. Rook to b8, attacking a queen. The queen doesn't really have anything better. Really, nothing better, I'm telling you. There's nothing better than capturing this pawn, and now, after the move, rook takes on b7, bringing the rook to the 7th rank, and the player with the black pieces decided to resign, and I'll explain why. This bishop is under threat. Rook takes bishop with check, practically winning the game immediately. The idea is that this bishop cannot move away either, because if it does, the game could simply continue with bishop takes on g6, pawn takes on g6, and now knight takes on f6, check. If the king moves, we would give a discovered check, so they are forced to capture. And now, instead of capturing the bishop directly, it is even more precise to play this move here. Queen to c6, check, forcing the king to move either here or here. In both cases, we capture with check, and now, whether the king goes to the e-file or the g-file, we would deliver checkmate on the next move. That's why the player with the black pieces resigned. So for those of you who stayed until the end of the video, you should know that this book, my new book, is available. This copy says resale prohibited because it's my edition. Yours won't have that. You can get it either in physical format like this to receive at home, or also in digital format. I've set the digital format at half price so that everyone who can't afford the physical copy can still get it in digital format, and you can read it just the same. It's the same book on your computer. If you don't know what this book is about, it has 3 parts. In the first part, I show you the difference between those players who manage to progress in chess and those who don't, so that you can understand the difference and make progress yourself. In the second part, I explain tactics to you, all right? So you have it, look. Part 2, the hidden vision of chess. Master Berlot's tactics and 90 others. The book is available in Spanish and English, all right? Both languages are available. And in the last part, you have a massive training section with real game situations, along with the solutions at the end, so you can practice perfectly. So, this book came out 2 days ago, and it's been a complete success. You all are loving it. If you want it, you have it right below in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a big like, and I'll see you tomorrow in the next one, friends. Goodbye.